Hey everybody, David here again, and TGIF to all of you. So I have a video that I want to be as an explainer video because I showed you this app in a 30-second teaser video a couple of days ago on my site, or channel rather. And as a result of that, I kind of wanted to break down how you might use this app, even if you can't use the app, why you might want to go and get it and download it, because there's a lot of cool features. A little bit of esoteric knowledge went into this. And I got to be honest with you, as much as I've been doing and dealing with Power Apps, I myself had to look up a few things here and there, maybe watch a few videos that I couldn't really find much information on, which kind of led me down the path of saying, maybe I ought to create a video for this. And so I wanted to explain the esoteric parts of this and also the skills that I learned in this, I think are going to be fantastic for helping me build better applications in the future. And I hope that I'm able to communicate this well enough for you guys to kind of learn what I've learned along the journey as well. All right, so here's what this is in a nutshell. So what we've got is a two-part app. There's a back office. This is where a administrator has the goal or the outcome of this situation is, as an administrator, I want to send notification to all of my employees. As a business owner, as an HR director, as an operations manager, as maybe the head of IT. I don't know. There's lots of use cases that you could use an app like this, right? But the point is, what you want to do is you want to send a notification, a push notification to your employees' telephones or cell phones, and you want them to be able to see it and track with the messages that you're sending them, and then give them the ability to reread those messages historically, maybe down the road if they need to. Now you can bake into this. Now I didn't do this, but you could do this. The ability to, maybe do an SMS text message with an integration with Twilio. You can use the baked-in connector for sending out an email. So there's lots of things or reasons to do it, but we're only going to focus on the push notifications. Know that you can do all of that stuff and more with all of this, and you can even go through a workflow approval process and yada, yada, yada. So with that being said, trying to keep this somewhat simple. This is the application that we use to send it out to the phone. And I'll go ahead and I'll try to light up my phone here real quick. And so this is going to be the application on the client. It goes and loads in the information. Now, right now, there's no data in here, so this should essentially just load up an empty app. But there's a bunch of stuff that's going on in the app, and that's why it does take a little bit of time to load. So anyway, front end, back end. Now you're kind of acclimated with what we've got. So let's dig into the code of this, and let's start highlighting not all of the details, but some of the esoteric parts, or at least the pieces that I think that would be good for you to know, or maybe some of the areas that I just completely got hung up on. And when we get into the mobile side of this, or the little phone app, that's kind of where a couple of times I lost my mind with it because I've never did a technique that I used for this particular demo. All right, so with that being said, I'm going to try to get this screen a little bit bigger so we can see stuff here. So I tried to clean up my naming conventions. I didn't do such a hot job. I can now see that I've got some leftover garbage for names. But for the most part, I always try to use good naming convention. As a matter of fact, this is just going to drive me nuts. So LBL, HEADDER. So label header. I think I got too many D's in there, but anyway, we'll leave it there. So what we've got here is a simple text box, a couple of other text boxes, but the esoteric parts that I want to show you here are on some of the different connectors. Now, I've got 4 different connectors for a very simple app, but you may be thinking, that's a lot of connectors for a simple app, and I would agree, you're correct. But in order to pull up the push notification, we need the push notification connector, which is PowerApps notification version 2. And we need to make sure, now this is part of the esoteric knowledge, right? Or the getcha gotcha that you need to understand. With the back end and a front end, this connector needs to be installed on both of them. So I could use this single back end, and I have a bunch of applications, and I'll hold down the Alt key so you can see the list. These are all of the applications that's in my environment, and there's a whole bunch of them here, right? So with that being said, each application, if I wanted to send a push notification to an application, I have to make sure that this connector is installed both here, which you can see that it is, but it also needs to be installed on the target application as well. So just make sure that if you're going to do this on your own and you're not going to use my template, that you need to make sure that this is installed on the front and the back end. Okay, so then you might say, hey, look, how did you get that list of all of the applications? And I would say, well, that was a little tricky, but I've done it before, so I already knew what I was getting into. And so I was this other connector called PowerApps Maker. And so if we go over here back to the tree view so I can get to the screen level, there is a application on, here it is, on visible. I'm not using the app on start. I'm using the screen when the screen's visible. And I've got some code jammed up in here for that, or at least I thought I did. I hope I didn't wipe it out. Oh dear Lord. Let me pause the video and make sure that I didn't just make a monkey mess out of what I thought I just had ready to go. Okay, so with a almost apparent heart attack avoided, I found my code, and I didn't see any errors up here under the health checker or the app checker. So I was like, well, okay, if I deleted it and did something bad, it should have lit up, and it didn't. So I do have somewhat of a bad use cases where sometimes I do the app on start. Other cases, I simply just use the screen on visible. I use them interchangeably, and I definitely started using it more when Power Apps started talking about potentially making the OnStart uh, what's the word, depreciated. And so this has to do with the navigation in that. And anyway, so I just started looking for other potential alternatives to do it. And then since I've been doing it, I wind up sticking information one way or the other. So there's good esoteric knowledge number two. Be consistent in what you do so you don't get kind of upset or freak out like I just did. So in this case, I did bury it under OnStart. And so I've got a couple things going on with this connector. Again, the connector is the Power App for Makers connector. And with that being said, the app OnStart, and why is my phone blowing up on the weekend here? It's after 5, go away. So the other thing is, now that I've gotten completely sidetracked, I have this call that I'm making a collection here called environment list. I don't really need it. You could delete this too if you were going to go ahead and download this, but I had it in here. I had intentions of using it for some other use case, which was essentially a lookup for a column that I didn't actually wind up using. So this actually could come out if it wanted to, but it's a good illustration here. So here we go where you see that I have the Power App for Makers, and I'm iterating for all through each one of the JSON objects. And I want you to notice the methods or the calls inside of this connector. This one I'm using get environment. This one I'm using the get apps. And then I'm bringing back the value for that. And then for each one of those rows or records, I'm simply pulling out what I'm calling essentially the app ID. And so the app ID is in the name value that's under get apps, right? So get apps.name. And so for here, I'm trying to get the actual visible name. So this is an actual GUID, but I want the plain text, like the human readable thing. So to get to that, under get apps, there's a child node called properties. And under that, there's a field called display name. And so that's where I'm pulling that. And so that name right there is actually what's being used here in the drop down. So I can simply just refer to the collection, and I'm using the name value, and that's why I built the collection, so I can just use it really quickly. And so that's how that's sitting there. And then this item right here is using the Office 365 users connector, and so that's the use case for this down here. Now all of this, when I go ahead and hit send, not only does it send out the push notification, but as a second step to this, I'm writing the information out to SharePoint. And so this is where you see that I'm patching all of this data down into the SharePoint, right? And so at this point, when it's all said and done, then I navigate to what I'm calling the commercial screen, and that you may find annoying. So if you do, you can just rewire this app to bypass and rip it out there. But nonetheless, if you need to get a hold of us or me, just wanted to make a quick, easy way for you to do so. So that's how you'll go ahead and do it. So just go ahead and, like I said, reroute all of that information. So with that being said, let's look and see how this works or how this might work. And then what we'll do is we'll dig into the mobile app and we'll see how that was made as well. So Right now, the SharePoint list that drives this is completely empty. There's nothing in it. So I can't chew talk bubblegum. I'm going to pause real quick and come right back. Okay, so that might have saved me a few seconds, I guess. But in any event, so now what I need to do with this text on screen filled out, what I need to do is to go ahead and search for the Catalyst client. Okay, so this is the client. That's this mobile phone over here because the back office is the app that I'm using right now. So with that being chosen, I've gone ahead and done that. Now, remember I said the environment wasn't used. I think I lied about that because this is where I'm using the lookup for that other collection here. So when you pick an app, it tells you that this app is in, this particular environment. And so it's really nice because when you use this like this connector brings back and aggregates all of your applications across all of your environments. And as an administrator, I was thinking it might be handy to know, hey, since it's bringing back a list of all of the apps, wouldn't it be helpful to know what environment this thing might be in so that at least you know maybe you chose the right environment? Because if you're doing ALM, maybe this particular app is named the same in 2 or 3 or 4 environments, and you want to make sure that you're pulling it back in from the right area. You could also concatenate it on the drop down so that you can put in the environment name there as well. So lots of different creative ways, but in any event, it's a really interesting, good use case for how to get the most out of this connector. And there's other ways of doing it. By no means is my way the only way. It's one of the ways. As with Microsoft, you can copy and paste text or whatever in Windows, like Control C, Control V. There's menu, graphical, right click, left click, any click, whatever. There's like 10 ways to always do something. So just know that whatever I'm showing, there's only, this is my way, this is the way I'm showing. This doesn't mean I don't use other ways, and it doesn't mean this is the only way. All right, that being said, we're going to pick the user. So what we need to do is pass a table of users and essentially a table of email addresses. So in this case, the Office 365 connector is what I'm using, but the value that I'm using from this object coming back is going to be its email address. So with that all being said, I'm going to go ahead and send this message. Now, with any luck, I should get the text message over here, and you can see it did. It came up over here, and you can also see my commercial on the other window, right? And then it just goes right back and resets, and you can do it all over again. So with that being said, I now have this notification. Let's get rid of the rest of these notifications on here. I don't really need it. And let's go ahead and double click in on that. And so that was probably a bad use case because unfortunately I didn't have the app closed. And this is one of the nuances that I had to deal with. So if you click on a notification, it's supposed to go ahead and bring you to the unread tab, which it does. But because it's a brand new notification and all of the data is being pulled on application launch, unfortunately, I'm going to have to bail on this app and I'll have to relaunch it because when you click the push notification, it actually does this right here. It launches the app, goes right into it, and goes through this loading process. And then it knows what you've read and it knows what you've unread. And so with all of that being said, now you would have been taken to this screen. You can see that it's here. You can go into the details of it, and there's all the information. You can click on the link to get more information. In this case, it's just, my stupid website here. And so at that point, I'm all good, and I can just hit the back. I get the annoying commercial yet again, and I know it's annoying. I hate ads, but in any event, we're always trying to drum up business, so it's a necessary evil, unfortunately. And in any event, so what I've got here is this read checkbox. So if you look over here on the read tab at the bottom, there's nothing here in the folder. And I go to the unread and I still have it here. But as soon as I click the read, now it shows up in the read area. So I don't have to have a big, huge list. I can keep track of what's new and what's not new. And so that's a common sense feature that you'd think you would have in an app. But to program this with local storage being introduced in the local app was a little bit of the esoteric craziness that I'm going to show you what I had to do to go through all of that. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into that mobile app experience. Let's show you some of the craziness there. So one of the things that I did and made sure to do, and I did it for my own sanity as well as for your sanity, is I made lots and lots of notes, copious notes, in fact, so that I can dig back into this thing 8 months, 12 months, a year from now and know what in the God's green earth I actually did inside of this app. I can't tell you how many times if I haven't done good housekeeping skills, made good formatting, and also commented stuff that, I had no clue what it is that I went ahead and did. So unfortunately, it is a little heavy, but there's a lot of craziness going on in this app, so it really made sense to document it, to explain to folks that are, maybe green, never used it, and even seasoned people like myself. Because, like I said, I'll come back 6, 8 months from now, and I won't remember what I did. And that kind of, one of the hard things for me too is as I'll get brought into a lot of developers' code that they've already done in Power Apps, and there's about a pound and a half of code under a button, and you have to sit. Why is people blowing up my phone after hours? People, it is the weekend. Go to bed or go get a beer. All right. In any event, let's keep moving along here. Sorry for the distractions, but it's just driving me bonkers here. Okay, so in this application on the mobile experience, I have a couple of different screens. So 3 are necessary. Again, here's my annoying commercial on the CC app. So with that being said, there's a lot of heavy lifting that needs to be done here. So let me talk very quickly through the use case scenarios. We have a SharePoint list, right? So we already know that. And so here's the one record that I sent out, and we can see that here. So I have the list on SharePoint, but then I also, and you're used to dealing with this probably almost in an everyday fashion, where I need to grab the information from SharePoint. I'm going to put it in a collection, and as I work with it in the app, I'm going to update the collection, and then eventually I'm going to send the collection data back into SharePoint on an as-needed basis or some variation therein of. Okay, so with that being said, this mobile app takes things to yet a third, more very complicated level if you've never used it before. And I say that because honestly, for me, I had to wrap my head around and really stop, slow down, and think about what I was going to do here. The concept of local storage, because when you use these, this mobile app, the Power App application, it's this guy right here, that Power Apps thing, you have the ability to use mobile device local storage. And so what I needed to do is to make sure that when a user, marks in their experience that they've gone ahead and they've read one of these articles here, that it shows up not only in the unread area, but I want to make sure that when somebody gets out of the app and then they later go back into it, that it remembers. But remember, it's stored in a collection, and collections are in memory type of issues. So how was I going to deal with that? And that's where the local storage came in. And this is where it's going to come in for you if you have a use case where you have a mobile device, a tablet, or a phone, and you need to take information that was in a collection, but you need to remember it locally, and it's maybe not enough information that you want to be bothered tracking all of this. Now, I could have very easily created a secondary table and just posted this information as far as the actual, the article itself, the article ID. I don't know what happened here. Yeah, so like this has a number back here. So what is this called? ID 20. So I could have created another table, and what I would have done is used my email address, and I would have done a lookup to this ID, which would have been 20. And so for every row in that database where my email exists and it has an ID listed here, that would signify what I had marked as read. But then I have to go out to SharePoint and pull that back in and down. And so it's a lot of to and fro, and that could wind up being quite a bit of traffic as well as just a lot of information, a lot of noise. I mean, that table is going to get pretty significant, especially if you've got a lot of notifications going out to a lot of people. So the best way to deal with it is like, I don't really need this on the server side. What I really wouldn't mind is that the user just kept it locally to them because it's only important to them, because it's only important to their user experience, but it's not important to the functionality of the app. And so these are the types of use cases that you got to think through about whether or not to store stuff in the database or store stuff back out locally. And so hopefully this use case presented maybe a compelling argument as to why you would want to do it this way. And so in any event, let's kind of go jump in to this, and I'm going to bite myself in the tail because all of the code that I needed to do is not on the application on start on this app. This how I got spun around a little bit earlier, but it's all going to be not even jammed up on the visible. I think I have like maybe one thing here. Yep, I have this one object that's being set, right? And this is this timer, Boolean bit value that basically says, hey, listen, when the screen loads, I want you to set this variable to true. And why do I want to set that variable to true? Because in this timer, for the start property, I have it set to, nope, not on start, but start. I have it set to that variable. So the screen will always load first, and then the timer will load. But by the time the timer loads, it already is going to see, hey, this is set to true, which means the timer will start off immediately, okay? And so I've got this set to run. The timer can run before it stops itself, is a full minute. And at the same time, I have a property called onTimerStart, which is pretty much almost as soon as the screen loads, right? And so what I'm doing is on the onStart, I've got a bunch of stuff jammed up underneath here. And so this is where I said I took copious notes. So I don't want to go through this in the video and explain each of this, but I'll just point out some highlights of stuff. And then what I wanted to do is let you read for yourself all of the copious notes that I wrote if you really want to know how this thing works. But basically, long story short, I had to create a temporary collection. I initialized it with just blank, so that's literally empty. And then with this command, okay, so there's three commands when you're getting into local storage. And so this is part of the esoteric. There's good documentation you should read for local storage on mobile devices in Canvas. And the three are going to be load data, clear data, and save data, I think. And so those are the three that you're going to use. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm loading the data, and this function or property has this third option. It's optional, but if you don't provide it, it basically is set to, I believe, false. I could be wrong on that. But if you have it set to false, it will show the end user an error message. And basically just says you can't find the file. Well, the user doesn't need to know that the file can or can't be found because that's what the rest of this crazy code is about. I'm basically just saying, hey, listen, ignore the error message. I don't want to show the user. And now what I'm doing is I'm checking if the collection is empty. This basically tells me, hey, listen, were you able to get anything from a local file? Because if you didn't, it's going to be empty. But if you did, it will have rows and data in it. And so then I'm parsing through all of the use case and the rest of the use cases in here. And so this gets sticky because remember, I got three levels or three layers with the SharePoint list being the parent and the authoritative source. And so I need to get information from SharePoint. I need to get it into the middleware or the middle piece or the middle level, which is basically the working collection. And then at the lowest level, I have a temporary collection to just retrieve information from the local storage, when this thing first starts up. And so even if I'm getting things from the local storage, or whether or not I've got things from a working SharePoint list, at some point, information could continue to stream through the system. An administrator may continue to make entries that will push out back-to-back notifications. And so in addition to being in the app and using it, down here, I'm having to essentially go back out and I'm having to say, hey, listen, I've got information in the collection. I need you to, look at the collection. I need you to get the maximum ID, the maximum number. And then I want you to pull from SharePoint any ID that's greater than the one that I already have. So basically all that's doing is grabbing out whatever is left over or whatever I don't have, and it's going to bring it down into the middle layer or the working collection. And then as I work with it, it'll get saved in or saved off out to local storage. Also, when it first loads up too, it's going to look at it and it's going to sync up with whatever might be within the local file, and it loads it into the middle storage container or middle storage object, this colsp data, that's my middle piece here. It again will have to go out to SharePoint and just say, hey, listen, I don't know how long that this thing or this file has been used or offline. It could be days, hours, weeks, or months. And so there may be a bunch of extra rows in SharePoint that we need to bring down and then put into that local storage file. So that's why this code on this page is a little gnarly, and this is why I, commented everything out. But go ahead and read through. I really put a lot of good notes in there for you. And then we've got the screen here. And so we've got a single gallery, and on the screen's initialization, so when it's visible, I have a variable that's set to false. And the reason I have it set to false is because the gallery itself in the items is basically trying to say, hey, listen, if this has been set to true, do this. If it's been set to false, do that. And so the do this and the do that basically says, hey, listen, if when this thing loads, I only want to see unread items. And so this is the way that it'll load out of the default, because these are buttons that I had only rounded off the bottom corners of the button to make it look like a tab. And so as a result of that, when you first get to the screen, you don't have to, a button works based on an on-click event, but you get to the screen loads. I needed it to load as if somebody had clicked the unread button. But there's also on select code that basically will toggle the appropriate. See, these are going true and false. Okay, so that gives up the different scenarios, and so that's what's accounted for in the items here. And so that's how we're able to track both what's read and what's not read. And then some additional magic happens for the on select for this read, because this is how we're dealing with writing things off to the local storage. So when we're doing the on check, let's see here. Come here. I think was it on check or on select? I think it's on select. Yep. So the on select, I'm essentially just going ahead and patching based on what the value is for that particular checkbox. And then what I'm doing is I'm blowing away the local storage, and then I'm rewriting the local storage based on the local middleware collection. So I get a fresh copy of local storage that is always in the current state based on my interaction with the software and the product, so that as maybe I just bail, I quit. There's no exit button. There's no way of getting out of it. I can't assume they're going to exit the application in any one way. So I did it this way on this event, so they can just bail on the app. And I know that if they were to bail after touching it, that at least the local storage is the way that they left it when they may have bailed on the app. So that's another weird little esoteric thing. And again, the last and final screen, we've got the details here on the screen, nothing big there. I click this, it goes to the commercial. Again, you can go ahead and make sure that you remove the commercial, and then what you'll do is you want to forward it to the loading page, because the loading page does that check to say, hey, I know we've got data in the collection, but do I have the most recent version of the data in the collection? And it'll go out to SharePoint and get any rows where it's greater than its largest number that's in the current local working collection. And then again, we'll store it out to the storage based on the interactivity. So long video, just wanted to kind of let you know the interworkings. Could have spent a lot more time covering this because it was a little complicated, even though it's quite a simple app. So download it, play with it, please. Have fun with it and see what you can do with it. And as always, make any comments, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.